Okay. Quick video. Not really. I want to explain to you guys why I'm not a Christian anymore. I feel like this video is kind of important. I had somebody ask me, this was a while back on my Instagram, when I used to do Bible studies. They asked me why I stopped doing them and why I'm not a Christian anymore. And so I feel like this video will finally do some justice, and it would also, I think it'll wake some people up, or at least, you know, if you are a Christian and you just don't want to hear certain things, then click away from this video. But if you want a different perspective, then stick around. So I used to be a pretty hardcore Christian, more so than most people. I would pretty much do everything the Bible said. You know, I would, you know, stay away from cursing. I would stay away from doing any kind of, like, all the sins, like gluttony and, you know, drugs and just like lying and deceit and cheating and just all these things. And I would just sit around, and I would go on my Instagram and I would do the Bible studies, and I'd stay inside. And this was back in 2019. I'd stay inside before going out. I would sit there. Instead of going out, I was reading the Bible. I was explaining it. I was writing the notes. I was sitting there and I was analyzing every piece of word, because if it is the Bible and if it is God's word, then every single word should mean something, right? That was my mindset. Now most people really, you know, they say they're Christians, but they're really not. They go out, you know, they do, you know, all the things that are considered sins, all these things, and they claim they're Christians, but not like me. Now I wasn't some saint, I wasn't a nun, but I was definitely better than most people. And what I found as I was going through and reading the Bible front and back, and I didn't read every single thing, but I went pretty far, and I've analyzed most of the words, and I just found so many contradictions. That's the word I'm looking for, and just things that just didn't make sense. And I think people, to really relate to people, everybody should know about Genesis, where Adam and Eve ate the fruit. Starting off with that, just that in and of itself didn't even make any fucking sense. So I don't know God too well, but maybe he was on a sick day. But I think if you're considered the most powerful, all-knowing, and all-moral being, then you could have found out a way to make sure that Adam and Eve didn't eat the fucking fruit, right? You could have made some kind of way to make that happen. I don't know, maybe God was on a sick day that day, he just wasn't feeling it, he didn't know. But if you're supposed to be all-powerful and all-knowing, then for one, he should have known that they were going to eat the fruit. So if he knew they were going to eat the fruit, and he had the power to stop it, then clearly he's not all-moral. Because after they ate the fruit, he sent them, basically we're all down to eternity because of that. You know, Jesus came and saved us, but because they ate the fruit, you know, they've risen up from the ground, and they're supposed to go back to the ground now, instead of living eternally and living forever and living in heaven. Now we're cursed, and we aren't allowed back into the Garden of Eden. So he knew that was going to happen. He had the power to stop it and chose not to do it. Right? That doesn't make any sense. And so let's say if he didn't know it, he was, you know, clapping cheeks, doing what God does. I don't know what he does, but he was busy on doing something, you know. He wasn't on, so if that's the case, then he's not all-knowing. So if he had the power to stop it, but he just didn't know about it, then he isn't all-knowing. So if he couldn't see into the future that they were going to do that, and he couldn't predict that it was going to happen, then he's not all-knowing. So then that's gone, or he's not all-moral. Now, if he knew it and wanted to stop it, but didn't have the power to do it for some reason, then he's not all-powerful. So for those of you Christians out there, you got to choose which one is it. Because with those three in mind, that God being considered the all-moral, all-powerful, you know, the trio, all-knowing being, he should have been able to stop it. He should have created some kind of way. You know, you look at some of these whoever created God in the Bible clearly didn't make him powerful enough, because some of these manga writers and some of these comic book artists and writers are able to come up with cooler superpowers for their heroes than they could have made for God, because he could have done something in the Bible to make it so that they didn't fucking eat the fruit. I don't know, I'm not a genius or anything, but something could have happened, right? Like, the devil shouldn't have even been there. I mean, how sneaky can he be, right? To be sneakier than God? I don't understand that. But and then, they're fucking like pretty much like babies. The fucking Adam and Eve. They're like pretty much like babies. They don't really know any better. It's like you could have made them smarter. You could have clearly done something with them so they not be fucking tricked by a snake. So just that in of itself, for one, is what made me go, that doesn't really make any sense. I used to watch George Carlin. He's a comedian. He just talked about a lot of things that just made sense. Like, is God, like, if people really in heaven just looking down at us, just watching us at any given point, or it's just a lot of it just it doesn't, because a lot of us, whenever we say somebody died, we always think that they went to heaven. We never consider at all that people go to hell and these things. And to be honest, the whole thing is a little bit unfair when you really think about it, because if God is all powerful, all knowing, and all moral, then why are people born already going to hell? Because he knows by the time they're born that they're doomed for eternity. The second they're born, they're doomed to go to hell. How could you make that a world they're doomed to go to hell? How could you make that a world to live in? That doesn't make any sense. This is gonna tie into free will pretty well, because I actually want to explain to people that free will, when you break it down, it doesn't actually exist. But how could you make it to, even by the Bible standards, it says that because you're free will and you're able to freely do what you do, that you're held to these standards. But then God's all powerful. That's contradictory. That doesn't make any sense. Now, if we really break free will down by science, I speak a certain way. I speak English, and the reason why I speak English is because I was born into America. I didn't choose that. I didn't choose to have the accent that I have. I didn't choose to be born, right? I didn't birth myself. It just happened. And if people who don't believe in Jesus, don't believe them because they're born in another part of the world, maybe Iraq, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Japan, whatever place they're born in certain conditions, God made it that way. And so just by being born in their area, they're not going to believe in Jesus right from the get-go. How does that make any sense? I have certain people that I know who have certain neurological problems, and it causes them to think in a certain way and to do certain things that, by the doctor's standards and by the doctor's words, they simply can't control it without medication. When you apply that to people in real life, that's essentially all we are. On the basic level, we have to eat. So, the sin of gluttony, it's like some people just born with eating disorders. Are they supposed to be doomed for hell? That doesn't make any sense. We have to have sex. So certain people, again, there was a guy who, he had some kind of cancer. He had some kind of cancer forming in his brain. I wish I could, maybe I looked it up later and you guys will see it, but he had some sort of cancer in his brain, and he started panicking. He started writing out a help me notes, because he started thinking in a very perverted way about like 4-year-old boys and girls, and he started thinking sick, and that wasn't him, and he knew that wasn't him. He's like, why am I thinking this way? The doctors opened him up, and then he had some kind of cancer or tumor growing in his head that caused him to think that way. They took it out. He stopped thinking that way. He couldn't have controlled that. There's nothing he could have done about that. That just goes to show you that our brains, we forget that even though we have some sort of will, we feel like we have some sort of consciousness, we are still a brain, right? And I've said this with certain foods, and I told you guys this, I was just bulking. As I was bulking, I couldn't really think as well. I wasn't sharp. I was eating like shit, and so of course the brain lives within the body. Certain chemicals that I eat from the food that I eat goes to the body. It transmits into the brain. I started thinking in a weird way, right? We forget that, and to have that be a detriment to you in the body, it transmits into the brain. I started thinking in a weird way, right? We forget that, and to have that be a detriment to you, and you're supposed to go to hell because of the way you think, and you can't even control your thoughts because you have hormones and you live inside a certain body. That doesn't make any sense. So just those things alone, for me, taking away even free will, that in itself, right? You can't control your thoughts. Just think about it. The next thought you think of, were you able to to control that, but it just come in of itself, like it just pop up. Or another way you can think about it is, if you think you can control your thoughts, can you stop them? And if you can stop them, don't you require thinking to stop them? Don't you have to think in order to stop thinking? It's mind-blowing. You can't control your thoughts. You can't. There is no such thing as free will. So, for all of us to be damned into eternity, and for me to have certain people that I love, and they have certain conditions, they have certain neurological problems, for them to be damned because of the way they think, and they you got to think in order to do and things like that. I can't accept that, and so I certainly can't accept that. I still believe in God. I won't get into that. That's my own thing. But for me to believe in the Christianity and its rules and its laws and its principles, I can't subscribe to that. To subscribe to the idea that people were damned into hell just by being born, even before they were born, for all of eternity. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. So yeah, that's this video on why I'm not a Christian anymore. And if you're watching this, I hope that at least this brought you some perspective. And I don't know, personally my life ever since I stopped being a Christian has been so much better, so much more eye-opening. There's so much more fun that I could have had, and I'm kind of glad I had the principles of being a Christian growing up. But being awoken now to that fact, I'm just so much more aware, and I can have so much more fun in life, and I feel like I have a more set and more fulfilling purpose in life than just to live a life of avoiding sins and avoiding any kind of real life experience. I feel like some people should be. I know personally, I was always thankful for the fact that I watched certain people that woke me up to this lie that we've pretty much been purported ever since we were kids. You need to act this way or you're gonna go to hell, and God's always watching, and the people in heaven are always watching you, and it's just stupid. It doesn't. When you think about it, it's like, fuck, that doesn't even make any sense. So yeah, I think if people actually read the Bible, you sit there and just believing things. If you actually read it, you'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't. Yeah. So that's this video on why I'm not a Christian anymore.